In today's video, we will move on to the poetry section. So I will give you the explanation of the poem My Mother at 66 by Kamala. In this poem, the poet Kamala relates a personal experience. So through it, she brings out a common paradox of human relationships. So what she tries to tell us from this poem is that sometimes we do feel deep sympathy for someone who are close to us, but we fail to express it in a proper manner. So let's begin from lines 1 to 5. So what I will do is, first I will read out the lines and then I will explain it. Driving from my parents' home to Cochin last Friday morning, I saw my mother beside me doze, open mouth, her face ashen like that of a corpse, and realized with pain that she was as old as she looked. So in these lines, the poet recalls the day when she was driving from her parents' home to Cochin, where she was to catch a flight. It was a Friday morning and her mother was also sitting by her side. She was going to the airport to see off the poet. But when the poet turned to look at her mother, she found her dozing off, and her mouth was open and her face looked very pale, like that of a corpse, like a dead body. A painful thought came to the poet's mind, and she realized that her mother had not only become old, but also looked very old in her looks. Now, moving on to the lines 5 to 10. But soon put that thought away and looked out at young trees sprinting, the merry children spilling out of their homes. But after the airport's security check, standing a few yards away, I looked again at her. So in these lines, the poet soon drove away from her mind to the thought of her mother's pale and aged face. She started looking out at the young trees that seemed to be running fast. She looked at the children running out of their homes in joy. This reminds the poet of youth and beauty. On the contrary, her mother is aging. She has become old and is moving towards death. This fills her with a feeling of insecurity. At last, they reached the airport and the poet went through the security check. Now, standing a few yards away, she looked at her mother once again. It is to be noted that the poet had not spoken a word to her mother all through the drive, and even now, she just looks at her from a distance. Perhaps it is a sad reflection of how indifferent the modern youth have grown towards their aged elders. Now let's move on to the last 4 lines. Wane, pale as a late winter's moon, and felt that old familiar ache, my childhood's fear. But all I said was, "See you soon, Amma." All I did was smile and smile and smile. So after her security check, the poet looked at her mother, who was standing a few yards away outside. The mother looked very pale and weak. In contrast to the young children and green trees, the mother has lost her youth and charm and has become pale like winter's moon. The poet felt in her body an old familiar ache, pain. It was like she used to feel in her childhood, when some fear overpowered her. Still, she spoke no word to her mother. The only thing she said was, "See you soon, Amma." All she did was smile and smile and smile. So even when the poet herself is full of fear of old age, her smile gives her mother the hope of survival. These lines convey the idea that the youngers do feel for their elders, but they don't communicate it properly. So, the message that this poem tries to convey is that aging is a natural process and it will affect each one of us. The complexity of life is that children are disturbed by the condition of their parents and wish to be with them. However, they have to leave their parents behind and move on with their commitments. So the question arises how to strike a balance between looking after the aging parents and attending to their duties and responsibilities. Okay, so now we have come to the end of the session. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.